Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Blank to Bank Fishing. Today I'm going to be showing you how to make a simple hair rig. To make the simple hair rig you will need the following items. Some braid. This is from the Corda Basics range, which is aimed at beginners predominantly. So these are quite a cheap range, but they are good quality. This is effectively a braid with a coat over it. It works really well for helping push your rig away from your weight because you don't want it tangled when you're out fishing. I can highly recommend this. I've caught many fish using this stuff. I do also use other ones, but for the purpose of this video, this is a good one for getting you started. You will need some hooks. For this video I'm using again the Corda Basics range wide gape hooks, but you can use any other kind of hook shapes really for this rig. These ones are shown as micro barbed. That's predominantly because many of the lakes I fish I have to use them, but you can use barbed or barbless, but just check at the lake you're fishing that you've got the suitable hooks. These are more than suitable for doing a simple hair rig for this video. You will need some scissors. They need to be nice and sharp for cutting your braid whilst making the rig. A pulley tool. This is used for pulling the knots nice and tight. A baiting needle. This is just a Corda Basics range baiting needle, which is used for putting your boilie or bait on the hook. And some hair stops. This is for keeping your bait on. It helps if you've already got some bait. So for this I'm just going to use a simple boilie, but you can use sweetcorn or luncheon meat or whatever it is you're fishing in that session. So let's get into making the simple hair rig now. When you get your hook link, most of them have some way of opening to make it easier to come off. It takes some off there. Now you're probably wondering how long do you want? Now I generally use roughly around 12 inches and I use my Corda Rig Safe as a bit of a measuring guide for that. So I generally start off around the 12-inch mark, which is there, and snip that off. Everyone has different lengths and over time you will find different ways of doing it, but I always find that's a real good starting point for me. But you will come up with your own ways that are made and perfect for you to do it. But that give you plenty of spare for actually wrapping around your hook, and it's always better to have slightly too much than too little. Now where this is coated hook link, one of the first things you will want to do before you tie this first knot is strip a bit of the coating off of it. Now I don't, as you can see, have very big nails, but you basically, if you just dig your nails in and peel some off, it should come off fairly easily. I generally would do that for slightly longer than what you want, because you want to do enough that you can tie your overhand loop knot, which will be what your bait will be on in just a moment. I'll show you that. But you also want enough that you can wrap it around the hook and have then a small section as well. So I would generally, I actually do around that far, so roughly around the 4 to 5 inch mark. It's worth noting at this point, if you're struggling to pull the coating off the braid, I mean it should be fairly easy, but if you do struggle with getting that off, there is a tool that Corda sell, which is this, which I believe they call a chodit tool, but you can actually use it for stripping off. So that bit there, you basically, the way that works is you put the hook link through it like so, and you pull it up, and this doesn't damage the braid at all, and you will then simply pull it back through. You see there, that's stripping it all off like so. So it strips it, and then that leaves the braid nicely exposed there. And now we will tie the overhand loop knot which is what the bait sits on. If you're unfamiliar with knots, there are plenty of videos on YouTube for showing you how to do knots. I would highly recommend Carl and Alex, who are two brothers who have put together fishing tutorial videos, and they show you how to do most knots you'd ever need. So they're definitely worth watching. But basically it's a single little knot like this. You see, so what I've done there is I've folded half of that back on itself, like so, and then you give it a little twist, and then the idea is that you put that little bit you've got spare back through the middle of them two, which can be a little bit fiddly to do. And when it is fiddly like this, a lot of people will often use their baiting needle to help put it through like so. Any knots you're going to do, always moisten them a bit before tightening that. Okay, so that ties that bit. So at the moment we've stripped a bit off, we've done a small little overhand loop knot, and you want to cut off that tag end like so. That's what you've got at the moment. Your next step will be for tying what's known as the knotless knot. Grab a hook. Obviously be careful when you're getting your hooks. You do not want to get yourself in the finger. And what will happen is this will be the hair that sits at the back. Okay, so what we do is we thread this through, and what's important here is that your line, so your hook link, goes through towards the point of the hook. That's really, really important. So it goes through towards the line of the hook. Okay, so you pull that through like so. Now if you don't have a bait, this is the point where you do the knotless knot, but I like to put a bait on at this point just to make sure I can get that hair length right. So you've got that ready to be done. You get your bait, and right in the middle of it poke your baiting needle through like so, and then you simply, there's always like a little hook on there that you hook your line just underneath it like that, and then push your boilie on like so. Always come through a little bit more than what you need. You then get one of your hair stops, take that off like so. You can just pull them off, and you want to put that through that little loop at the end. Once it's halfway through, pull the line tight, can be a little bit fiddly at times doing this. Certainly these V-shaped ones aren't the easiest to do, but I generally put it in, pull that tight like so, and you'll see that stops your bait coming off. They do all kinds of different colours, you don't have to use orange, you can use any colour. But that's that set there. Now obviously you got your hook here, some people put the hook on afterwards, it really doesn't matter there. But so you've then got your hook on like so, and this is where you're setting the length. So some people like it quite long, some people like it shorter. I generally like it to be just a little bit past. I like to have a little bit of play with it, so that if I want to, I can put something else on there. So because sometimes I will top them up with, say, like a sweetcorn or something like that. So I set mine around about that, but we can set it a little bit longer as well, maybe to there. The idea being that when the fish picks that up, the hook will come and get them as well. But obviously you can't just leave that like that. At the moment the hook's still wobbling around. So what we do at this point is we do what's known as the knotless knot. So using what's left here, we then bring it round and under, and make sure what I do at this point is I make sure I'm pinching that together so that the hair is at the back of the hook. You don't want it around the front, that needs to be at the back of it. Okay, so that's nicely at the back, as you can hopefully see. And then I will wrap it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times, 6 times, 7 times I like to do, like so. And then tag end, again you're going through towards the point. Okay, it has to be towards the point. And you pull that through nice and tight. Okay, and what that should do is it leaves you can see there's just that tiny little bit that's still uncoated. Now what that means is it gives it far more movement, it's far less stiff. Okay, and your boilie is like so from there. So then all we are left to have to do with this simple hair rig is then tie an overhand loop at the end, which is what you will use to connect to whatever lead arrangement it is you're using. So again, do an overhand like so, like that, pull it through. Try and make it a little bit bigger this time, so if you can ideally get your bait through it if you needed to. Make it wet before tightening, so a little bit of saliva. This is where I'll use the pulley tool, just pull that nice and tight there. Make sure you're not going to pull it and slip and get the hook in your hand, so you can hold the curve of the hook and pull it like so. Better still, you can actually put your hook in here using this, and you then clamp it on there and pull it. So you pull that, so you're already making that nice and tight. And then the last thing, just to tidy that up, is this tag end you got here. Just give that a snip off, and there you have it. So that is a nice simple hair rig, predominantly used for catching carp, but you can catch other fish obviously on that. Now there's lots and lots of ways that you can actually make this rig a bit more effective and a little bit nicer, which loads of people have different ways of doing it. I'm just trying to show the most basic and easiest way for people starting out today. But I'll just explain a little bit of what can be done to make this a little bit better at the moment. So where you've got the hair coming out the back of this hook, you can actually use little bits of silicone, or you can actually go further down the hook, so do more turns, so that the hair is pinned to it a bit more if you don't want it quite so loose. I quite often use a little bit of silicone here that will help it go like that, and I can tell then if it's gone as well. Another thing you can do is, before you tie this knot here, you get what's called anti-tangle sleeves, and they basically slide on. You have the thinnest end down this end, the fattest end that end, and you slide them up, and what they do is, when you have attached it to, for example, the swivel on your rig, your leader, you push them down, they cover up the quick change swivel, and it means that it actually helps push that rig out a bit, because the last thing you want is you cast out, you think you've done well, and this is all tangled up, because then you ain't going to catch anything. So, but hopefully the properties of it will help prevent that happening. Here's an example of one of the slightly improved hair rigs that I use often now. So this is what I mean when I say there's lots of little things you can tweak to make things slightly more effective in different situations. So the slight differences here is I use a tiny piece of silicone tubing, which you can buy off eBay, as cheap as anything. So it comes in real long lines of this, and I just simply cut off a tiny little bit. And once I tie this part of it, I will thread that down, put the hook point through it, and that basically helps hold that hair rig a bit closer to your hook. And it also means if you get done by one, you would know, because it will slide it right back. But it just can help it be that little bit more effective rather than doing too many turns down the hook itself. You'll also see at this point here, so that's helping give that hook a bit of a wicked curve there. Now what I've used to do that is these. Now these are kickers, and they basically help give that little curve there to it. So there's all different sizes. I generally use the mediums, and you basically, as you can see in the picture there, you slide them down the hook. So you would do that once the hook is on and tied. Before you tie the opposite end of the hook, you slide that down and put it on. A lot of people will also use shrink tubing to do that, which is absolutely fine as well, and you just add your own curve as desired on there. For that part, I've also added here, so this is a tungsten sinker. You buy them in little packs, you can get from Cord and Ash, whoever, anyone really. Now what that does is that helps keep your line pinned to the bottom, because what you don't want is it's all up like this when a carp comes in and they fill that and then they're gone. That helps sink your line, and that also means that this rig then I can actually use this with wafters, which is another type of bait, which actually sits a little bit off the bottom, so not quite as high as a pop-up, not quite as buoyant, but sits a bit up, so that will help keep it balanced and pinning your line down, just in case you've got one that is quite buoyant in itself. And then the last thing I add is what I spoke about before, which is this bit. So these are basically their anti-tangle sleeves. So before you tie that knot at the end, you slide one of these down onto your line. You then tie your knot at the end, the overhand loop knot, and then slide this down it. And the benefit of that is that if I'm fishing a rig where I've got a swivel on the end or a quick change clip like I normally use, I can literally clip on a new rig, and then I would slide this over to protect that, to stop it from catching anything. But that also helps push that rig out away from your lead, so that it's more likely to be presented how you want. So that's a couple of simple ways there for you how you can improve the hair rig. Some people possibly give these different names once they've made any adaptations, but I mean ultimately it's still the same. You still have your hair there and the hook. But hopefully that will help you progress with your fishing. If you've enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe to my channel. It really helps as a new channel. And if you have any comments about the rigs, or have any improvements or any tips for anyone else in the fishing community, please share them in the comments. I really enjoy reading and replying to you all.